a new nominee.
We fight for the future.
Her new running mate.
I couldn't be prouder to be on this ticket.
And a surge in enthusiasm.
This has energized us for the future.
I haven't been this excited in a long time.
With the race for president transformed, Democrats gather in Chicago.
This is a battle of inches, not of yards.
Hoping to build momentum to make history this November.
Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it?
It's the opening night of the 2024 Democratic National Convention.
Welcome to PBS News special coverage of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nawaz. It's only been 1 month since Republicans gathered for their convention 90 miles from here. But in that month, the race for the White House has been completely upended. Democrats are feeling momentum heading into this first night of the convention. Vice President Kamala Harris, now the Democratic nominee for president, has seen a surge in polls to make this now a razor-thin election. The vice president will be here tonight, of course, but much of the focus will be on the current president, Joe Biden, as he addresses his party after ending his campaign just 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right. We'll also hear from First Lady Jill Biden and former Secretary of State and 2016 Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. And we'll be watching it all night alongside some familiar faces here at our table. That includes Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter, David Brooks of the New York Times, and Jonathan Capehart of the Washington Post.
But first, let's head down to the convention floor. That's where we find our White House correspondent, Laura Barone-Lopez, who's been covering the Biden and now Harris campaign. Laura, tell us what's going on down there.
Well, there's a lot of excitement and action down here. I was just speaking with a delegate from a swing state who said that they felt as though so much energy has changed on the ground in their state once the nominee became Kamala Harris, that it was night and day compared to when President Biden was the nominee, that they feel as though they're seeing more from Kamala Harris than they were from President Biden. That being said, though, tonight is, as Jeff mentioned, President Biden's main night, and it will be about his legacy. But down here on the floor, we're also seeing a lot of signs saying union yes, people getting ready for Sean Fain's speech. He is speaking tonight, the president of the United Auto Workers, as Kamala Harris and Tim Walz really lean in to their working class, middle class agenda and their credentials, something that they're trying to reach voters on. I also saw that another delegation, Washington State, has some sashes, Amna, that say Cowboy Kamala. We know that Harris is using a lot of Beyonce's music during her rollout of her campaign as she's really trying to solidify and differentiate herself as the new Democratic nominee.
And Laura, I know you've been talking to your campaign sources all day. What do we expect to hear from President Biden when he takes the stage later tonight?
Well, President Biden is going to be talking about his legacy, what he has done and what he has accomplished as president. Because, again, Jeff, that is, his record is not something that Kamala Harris is going to be running away from. In fact, a lot of what she worked on with President Biden throughout this term in office is something that she wants to highlight, whether it's capping insulin at $35, the infrastructure bill that President Biden was able to pass, and other bipartisan legislation. So President Biden is going to remind voters what his administration was able to do. And of course, he is going to be talking about the fact that he thinks that it's time to hand off the baton and why he thinks Kamala Harris is the best person to hand that baton off to, Jeff.
Laura Barone-Lopez on the convention floor for us tonight. Laura, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let's bring it back now here to our panel. Amy Walter, David Brooks, Jonathan Capehart. Great to have you all here in Chicago with us. Jonathan, David, I want to get your take just on this convention, which is not, Jonathan, the convention Democrats thought they'd be having a month ago. A month ago, by the way. What do you make of how they've just totally revamped the program, how they've lined up the speakers, the fact that we're now going to hear from the sitting president on the first night of the convention?
Who would have thought Democrats would get their act together so quickly after the president decided not to run for re-election. I remember however many weeks ago it was, we were talking about the potential of a contested convention and floor fights and things like that, and none of that happened. I think this might be the most united Democrats have been in ages, maybe since, well, I can't even say Barack Obama because of the contentiousness between Senator Obama and Senator Clinton in their primary fights. I wasn't expecting this at all, but I think because of the energy and enthusiasm we've seen since Vice President Harris took the top of the ticket, you feel it here in the hall. You see it in the excitement in people's faces. So the Democrats are in an infinitely better spot right now than they were a month ago. And with the President of the United States getting the accolades that he deserves on this first night, in a literal handing of the baton, not just to his vice president, but literally to the next generation of Democrats, it's going to be an incredible moment to see.
David, I've thought about that. I think it's a Bill Clinton line about, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. It feels like that has switched. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, although I'm hoping that Biden will say, I want my delegates back. We're going to have an open convention. I want a big fight.
That'd be quite a speech.
Yeah. I'm good. Hey, look at the last 4 weeks. Anything could happen. It is, it's, as I said on the news hour, this is the first time I've been at two conventions where both sides are happy. Because the Republicans really thought we got this in a slam dunk. Now the Democrats are probably a little over-exuberant, but feeling really good about themselves. I guess I'm looking forward to this convention first for tonight, obviously to see Steve Kerr, the U.S. basketball coach of basketball, but mostly to see Biden personal. I'm hoping he'll get a little personal, reflect on an incredible career, and a little sadness. It would be normal to show some sadness over what just happened to him. But then the larger picture is, clearly the Democrats have tons of momentum, but it's still close. They've got up to close. So what's the next chapter? Do they have to do something else to get a winning edge? Or are they doing good? Or can they just coast on what they're doing right now? I'm curious over the next few days to see what they do.
Amy, what about that? I mean, from where you sit, are Democrats positioned to keep riding this wave of momentum they found with Kamala Harris as the nominee?
So I think what happened, and I agree with Jonathan, it is remarkable how quickly the party coalesced behind her and how differently she is viewed now by those voters, those same exact voters than she was just a month ago. Her favorability ratings have shot up. Enthusiasm has shot up. These were not things that people were saying about her even a month ago. So they have the base now engaged. The fight from here on out is for that 5 to 6% of the electorate that hasn't put on their blue jersey or their red jersey. They are still sort of either shopping around, maybe not paying as much attention.
Amy? Who are these people who haven't yet figured out who they're going to vote for?
I'll give you a little analogy. I know when the football season begins, okay? I know there's an NFL season. I know there are teams. I know there are players. There are some people who go into fantasy football leagues. There are some people who know the schedule. They know who's in first. They know who's in last. That's who we are, okay? We're those people who follow it at a detail to that degree. I am not following football that way. I start following it when it starts to get interesting, like closer to the playoffs, when people are talking about it, when people are engaging.
That's sooner than I do.
But the point being, this isn't because they are not smart people, that they're not civic-minded people, that they're not interested. They just do not see it in the same way that people who are really engaged partisans or feel a very, very strongly about who will win.
So part of the challenge, to Amy's point here, Jonathan, is that
you've got to get those people.
Yeah, you have to get those people, and Vice President Harris is still in some ways defining herself to most of America, right? Who know her only in the vice presidential role, and most vice presidents aren't that well known. How much of that do you expect to hear on the stage tonight and in this condensed timeline?
Well, I think we're going to hear lots of her story throughout these next 4 days from the people who take the stage, particularly the president tonight. I think other big marquee people will talk about the party, but also her. And then the big moment will be when the second gentleman takes the stage and talks about his wife. And then the vice president gets up there and talks about, thanks the delegates for nominating her. She accepts the nomination, and then she tells her story. The thing that we have to keep in mind is, yes, all these people who are like me who don't pay attention to the NFL until Super Bowl Sunday. But what we have to remember is that the vice president has been traveling the country since Dobbs. And even before then, she was going to college campuses, talking to young people. So she has been tilling the field all this time as a dutiful vice president, and now we're about to see that pay off with her at the top of the ticket. And I think those folks, as we go into the campaign in the fall, will be open to her story.
Let's welcome in, if we can, Democratic Senator Gary Peters, who joins us now. You can't hear us, sir? Can you hear me across the table?
I can hear you now.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being with us.
Perfect timing.
Indeed. So let's start there with your assessment of how the Harris-Walz ticket has reset this race in your view.
It's done it in a big way. Certainly in Michigan, but around the country, as I've been working on races as a DSCC chair. But it's just about the amount of energy that we're seeing as a result of this race, especially young people throughout Michigan. I did a canvas kickoff recently, and on a Saturday and a beautiful day in Michigan. It's sometimes hard to get volunteers to go out and go outdoor knocking, but we had a large crowd, lots of young people, and what really got me going was that over half of the young people that were there said it's the first time they ever worked on a campaign. They were coming out to knock on doors to make a difference. So when you get that kind of energy on the ground, that makes a huge difference.
Where does that make a difference, especially in your role as chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee? We know that Senate map has not looked great for Democrats, right? You've got some 23 seats there you've got to defend. And I heard you in an earlier interview say that you believe that not only will Democrats keep the majority, but you have a chance to expand the map. You mentioned specifically Texas and Florida.
Correct.
Why? What have you seen in those two states that tells you Democrats have a chance there?
Well, first off, I feel very good that we're going to hold the 50 seats. That means making sure the incumbents we have now come back, and where we don't have an incumbent running in Michigan to hold that seat, we have a very strong challenger that's going to be able to win there, Alyssa Slotkin. But we can go on the offense, and these are tough states, both Texas and Florida, but if we look at candidate quality, and that's how we've been able to win races in the last cycle. Folks didn't think we could do what we did last cycle. We did it. And these are candidate-to-candidate races. We have very strong incumbents for strong candidates versus flawed Republicans. And making that kind of contrast can be a big deal. And we're seeing in places like Texas and Florida, we have weak Republican incumbents that aren't polling very well. We have strong Democratic challengers. In Florida, we've got an abortion referendum on there, abortion rights, which we know the power of that to turn out people. So we believe that it's very possible. I'm cautiously optimistic, although I will tell you as the DSCC chair, my number one job is to bring all the incumbents back. And when we do that, we'll be at 50, and then Tim Walz will be the tiebreaker for us.
Well, a handful of those incumbents, Sherrod Brown of Ohio, Jon Tester of Montana, Jackie Rosen of Nevada, they opted against attending the DNC this week. Why? What message does that send that they don't want to appear alongside the nominee and the sitting president?
Well, every candidate's going to make a decision as to what they need to do, and certainly opting to be in your home state campaigning during this time and not being here is something that they will make that decision and figure they want to be talking to voters in their respective states. But I don't think that means they don't support the ticket. I don't think that's what that means. It's that they know that every day on the ground will make a difference. These are really tight races. They're going to come right down to the wire. Every day that you're talking to voters in your state is a day that's critically important to that outcome.
The historic fundraising that we've seen on the Democratic side since Harris had become the nominee, how much of that has trickled down to what you do, focusing on keeping the Senate, and how has that, if at all, benefited the infrastructure and the get out the vote operations that you're trying to mount?
Well, it's been a big plus. After the announcement was made, we saw the fundraising for the DSCC, my committee, went up dramatically, especially our small donors, our online donations. In fact, we had a record the day after. It beat the previous record. That was when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, and we had a huge surge of support at that time. And then we beat the record again the next day, and it's continued. And it hasn't just been confined to the DSCC. Our individual candidates and their fundraising has also gone up dramatically since that time. And it's what's most encouraging to me, it's those small donors, the folks who are contributing $5, $10, $20, whatever they have, that are engaged. And we find when people give $20 to a campaign, they're invested, they tell their neighbors and their friends, and they'll often volunteer as well. So it's very encouraging.
Senator, can I ask you about an issue that I know you've seen cause a lot of frustration among Democratic voters in Michigan? And led many of them to vote uncommitted during the primary process as well, and that was this Biden-Harris administration's policy in the Middle East. And I want to ask you about it because I heard earlier today in speaking with another reporter that you mentioned that you think that there are differences between Vice President Harris and President Biden when it comes to how they view that conflict or what U.S. policy should be. And in your words, you said that she should be who she is, that a candidate needs to be who they are. What does that mean? Do you think that Vice President Harris coming out and articulating a different policy could help bring in more voters?
The comments that I made was whatever her position is on that, she just needs to be herself. It may be the same as what we've been seeing out of the Biden-Harris administration. She may have some nuances there. She's running for president. She's going to be the next president of the United States, in my opinion. But in order to win, she needs to be true to who she is. She needs to know the American people who she is. We're going to see that here, certainly when she gives her speech. So it may be what we've already seen. It may be different. Whatever it is, she's got to be true to herself. And I know her. She was my seatmate in the Senate. We sat next to each other as new members. We were kind of in the back row in the corner. And, as the new kids on the block, I had a lot of comments about what was going on with some of our
That's where all the good conversation goes on, in that back row.
What do you know about Vice President Harris that the rest of us don't know? Pull back the curtain a bit.
Well, I think others know. And I just know that she is a woman with a good sense of humor. She is really engaging as a friend. But she's also very passionate. But I think other people know that too. But I can just say that I've seen that personally and have had that opportunity to work with her. So I'm really excited about her candidacy. I think it is not only great for the country, it's going to help us win our seats in the key Senate races and hold the majority. And as you know, having a majority in the Senate is absolutely critical for the president. It's tough for a president to move their agenda forward if they don't have a majority in the Senate.
When it comes to keeping the Senate, do you care to put a number on it? How many seats do you think you'll have come November?
Well, I'm very confident we're going to have 50, but I believe it's possible we can do a 51.
I feel like there's some more questions I want to ask about those back row conversations. We can do that offline another time.
I would enjoy doing that.
Senator Gary Peters from Michigan. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you here.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
All right. Jonathan, David, let's bring you in. Let's bring you in here. Jonathan, based on your conversations with other Democrats and Senate Democrats, how are they feeling about their chances in keeping that chamber?
In keeping the Senate. I have not had deep conversations with folks about their thoughts about the Senate, but I do think Democrats overall in the House and the Senate and those looking at the White House are really confident about taking the majority in the House. I think they are more confident than they were a month ago that the chances are better than 50-50 that they can win the White House, especially given the way things are. And with the Senate, people sort of hesitate. It's sort of like, maybe we can hold on to the majority. I think they can hold on to the majority, which is why I thought Senator Peters when he said, we'll keep 50, wasn't surprised by that. What I was surprised is that, Democrats are always hopeful about Texas and Florida. Always hopeful about Texas and Florida, but they never talk about it really, because it's like, good try. But the fact that the head of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee said, we're feeling confident that we could possibly have a go at it in Texas and Florida, made my ears perk up, especially for the reasons he gave. Candidate quality and abortion on the ballot in Florida. And I'm looking at Amy because Amy's like, silly rabbit.
You're not silly. But he has a lot of defense. He's got to play a lot of defense. As you noted, there are 23 seats they have to defend, and 9 of them are in really competitive states.
Yeah.
Now, things have looked pretty good for this Democratic class up this year, given how difficult the map is. Even in states like Ohio, that Trump will win Ohio, you're not going to get an investment at the presidential level. Sherrod Brown, the Democratic incumbent, has been leading in the polls consistently. Now, I think it's going to tighten up. He's still going to have to outrun Harris by 6 to 8 points. Not easy. But the fact that that race is still in play, and in the other battleground states, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, the Democratic candidates there have been looking consistently really strong. And so what it does mean is, he's right, 50-50, well, we all know what that means, right? If 50-50 without getting Harris, that's a Republican Senate. So regardless, it's who wins the presidency that will tell you who gets control of the Senate. The only question is it going to be +1 or +2 for Republicans?
We should say, if people are hearing music in the background, that's country music star Mickey Guyton performing on the stage behind us. You see there on the split screen. Can we go back to something that you said while we kind of keep our eye on the stage? Sherrod Brown, in order to win Ohio, has to run 6 to 8 points ahead of the nominee.
Yeah, it's not easy.
How does that work?
Well, you can ask the one person who's been able to hit that number in the last 2 election cycles, and that's Susan Collins from Maine, Maine is a much smaller state, of course. It's a state that is Democratic leaning, but it does have more conservative pockets, and she has built a brand of being an independent voice in that state. That's how John Tester from Montana continues to win election after election. He was elected in 2006.
Yeah.
The difference, Sherrod Brown, the last time he ran in a presidential year was 2012, when Barack Obama was getting 51% of the vote in Ohio. So he's used to running in a red state now, but it's much redder than it was back then.
David, in terms of how these Senate races link to folks at the top of the ticket, right? Harris here and Trump on the Republican side. It's been fascinating to see, and I want to get your take on Texas too, because I feel like if I had $1 for every time someone told me this was the year that Texas goes blue, I would be a wealthy woman. But this idea that in some of these races, Texas, for example, there's a lot of focus on immigration, and you have the Democratic candidate there, Colin Allred, really going tough on immigration and saying Senator Ted Cruz has not done enough, I would be tougher. It's like hyper-local issues that make the difference here. Who does that benefit in your opinion?
Allred is a good candidate.
Yeah.
He's the best candidate they've thrown against, certainly, Ted Cruz. But, every 6 years, Democrats take a look at Ted Cruz and their eyes get wide. They think, I don't really like that guy. Plus, his personality, it's not the easiest guy. So if we can't take that guy out, and then every 6 years he wins, because it's Texas. It's just Texas. And so I've heard this. Actually, this year, Georgia, you always hear Georgia's about to turn. Georgia's, I don't know, Amy would know this better than I, seems to be a little more plausible the Democrats do well in Georgia than in Texas. Texas is still pretty Texas-y.
It is. It's still, although they will do better, or at least in 2020, did better in Texas than Ohio. The margin was smaller in Texas.
Right.
So it's one of those where you get close enough. North Carolina, to me, is the most fascinating of the battleground states, of those ones that get so close, and yet they just are never quite over the top. Democrats, that is. 2008, the last time they were able to win there. Yeah.
Let's go back to the floor for a quick second, because Laura Roland-Lopez has a delegate with her. Laura, are you there? Who are you with?
Yeah, I'm here, Jeff, and I have Lupe Conchas. He's a delegate from Arizona in Maricopa County, which, as anyone knows, Arizona, Maricopa County is one of those swing counties. So, Lupe, I just wanted to ask you, how have things changed on the ground since Kamala Harris became the nominee?
Well, definitely there has been a burst of excitement in Arizona. We're ready to hit the ground running to November. And I think that young people, seniors, even independent voters, even Republicans and Democrats are ready to come together to deliver 11 electoral votes to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Did it feel like that before? What was it like on the ground when President Biden was the nominee, and what were conversations with voters like then?
Yeah, so President Biden won our election in 2020, our 11 electoral votes. And for us, we believe that the Biden agenda is the Harris agenda, and we know that that is a winning agenda because it's for working class people, and it's for lowering the cost of healthcare and lowering the cost of living. And we think that these issues have continued to be very important and front and center to Arizonans.
In addition to those affordability issues and housing issues, what are some of the other issues that you hear about the most from voters?
Yeah, I know that housing is extremely important. Me, I'm a renter, and I had my rent increase 14% in just 1 year. And we've seen that housing has increased, and that also affects our seniors who are on fixed incomes. And when their rents go up, then they're either displaced out of their homes or they need to go live somewhere else. And so I think that housing is extremely important in Arizona, and I believe in democracy as well. We want to make sure that we have free and fair elections, and we want to make sure that our votes matter and that our votes are counted and that nobody is trying to take our right to vote away.
What do you hope to hear from Kamala Harris this week and Tim Walz about how they may differentiate themselves from President Biden?
Yeah, so I believe that we need these leaders of the Democratic Party to get everyone engaged, because we cannot sit at home and expect for voters to know what it is that the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz stand for. We need to go out and knock on doors. We need to go and make phone calls, text messages, and we need to be in the communities like my community in Glendale, in Phoenix, and Guadalupe, which is a highly Democratic and also Latino and African American and Black communities. We need volunteers and leaders to be there to make sure that we get out the vote.
Great, Lupe. Thank you so much. Jeff and Amna, as you heard, Lupe thinks that that Kamala Harris needs to really be speaking to a lot of those key voting blocs that are a part of the Democratic coalition, be it Latinos, Black voters, and seniors.
And Laura, a question for Mr. Conchas, if you wouldn't mind. So the Harris campaign says that the Harris-Walz ticket has opened up multiple pathways to 270 electoral votes, including through the Sun Belt, places like Arizona, Nevada. From where he sits, does he think that that is within the realm of possibility?
Lupe, my colleague Jeff has a question for you. He wants to know that the Harris campaign believes that since she became the nominee, that there have been pathways opened up in states like Arizona and Nevada. Do you think that Arizona is winnable for Kamala Harris?
100% it's winnable. I think about my mom, who she was going to support the president, Joe Biden, but now she's excited about Kamala Harris. She's excited to see a woman at the top of the ticket. She's excited to see what Kamala Harris is going to bring a brighter future, not only to her and to her kids, but also to her grandchildren as well.
Jeff, as you heard, he's kind of is capturing, Lupe is capturing that enthusiasm that has only grown with Harris at the top of the ticket.
All right, Laura Barron Lopez, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Amy Walter, what we just heard, I mean, put that into context for us. The Democrats need to win Pennsylvania as they try to cobble together enough states, enough electoral votes. What does it look like if they go through the Sun Belt?
Well, the Sun Belt, your choice is you either win Pennsylvania and those other two Midwestern states plus a congressional district in Nebraska for that bare 270. If you start putting states like Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, and even North Carolina in the mix, now it just opens opportunities for you. Arizona is the most interesting to me in that it's a state that had been so red for so long. People weren't really paying much attention to it. And yet, if you go back these last to 2016, since that election, Democrats have won every statewide office. They've won both of the Senate seats. They've had a special election there. It feels like every 10 minutes there's a special election in Arizona. They've won all of those. They won the governorship. They won down ballot races for statewide office in that state. And of course, it was very narrow, but Biden won there. It is Maricopa County, it's everything. It's basically the entire state vote. Most of the vote comes from Maricopa. So it is a suburban area that is also has very different dynamics. And look, I think you've got for the Harris campaign, the real question is, she's been able to energize those core voters, but what about those Latino voters who were telling pollsters, we've been hearing them in focus groups talking about, well, I didn't really like Donald Trump, but I kind of think he was better on the economy. I'm really conscious about how much stuff costs. Maybe, maybe we should give him another shot because he did a good job when he was president on the economy. Can she win those types of voters back? There is an abortion referendum on the ballot in Arizona. It is interesting, though, that remember the people who are going to turn out and vote for that amendment might not necessarily be people who are voting for Harris because they can be both pro-choice and also vote for Trump. But just having the energy behind that and the focus on that issue is beneficial to Harris.
And when you look at this core voting bloc, I'm so glad you brought it up, not just reference to Arizona, but of course in so many other states, Nevada and Georgia and otherwise, Jonathan, this, going after the fastest growing segment of the voting population, Latino voters in America. And we know that's where Mr. Trump had been making some inroads, right? Not necessarily winning over a majority of voters, but enough to make a difference in enough places that mattered. We've seen this Harris-Walz campaign come out very quickly with targeted strategies, ads targeting members of the community, launching a WhatsApp group, which, by the way, for anyone in a first-generation American family, if it's not happening on WhatsApp, it's not happening. They're reaching out in a very what people will call culturally competent way. Is there a realization on the campaign that they kind of have to win back ground in some of these places? They've been losing previously when Biden was at the top of the ticket.
Well, sure. I mean, the fact that they're doing these things is proof of that. And cultural competency is extremely important when you're talking about not just Latino voters, but black voters, any quote-unquote subgroup, if you will. Folks want to know that you understand them. And they're listening for words. They're looking at how you carry yourself when you talk about issues that are important to them. I'm highly attuned to when Vice President Harris is talking to me, black person to black person. I see it. It's in mannerisms, it's in tone, it's in the way she says things. And I think people are looking to see themselves reflected in the candidate somehow. And when you have a presidential campaign that is culturally competent, that has people around them who are able to say, here, this is how you reach these voters, this is how you have a chance to talk to them. Whether they vote for you is another thing. But here's a way you can communicate with them. You have always had people like that you have candidates who are willing to say, okay, let's do it. I think that is going to make it possible for the Harris-Walz ticket to maybe win those, at least get a hearing from those voters who are looking at Trump to give him their vote this November.
And David, on the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who for the last 2 weeks has been fielding unsolicited advice from folks like Nikki Haley and Lindsey Graham to focus on the issues, focus on the economy and immigration. These two areas which polls show him leading. The pluralities of voters say that we trust him on these two issues. Yet, he appears to be constitutionally unable to do that. He's talking about all sorts of other things and coming up with attack lines that have not seemed to stick against Kamala Harris. What is the political consequence of that?
Yeah, well, first, what is the surge about that Harris has enjoyed? First, it's the Nikki Haley rule. Whichever party gets rid of their 80-year-old first is going to do well. And so the Democrats did that, and they're doing well. And so I think that's part of it. Second, people generally look at her and they think, very likable person. I like her. She seems happy. She seems ebullient. And so the fact that she's a candidate without serious drawbacks, which Biden and Trump both had in their own way. So I think that's the second thing. But then the third thing, and this is the most interesting thing, which Amy talked about at the beginning, why are her favorabilities up? Why are handling the economy? Why is that all way up? And I think a lot of people took a look at her and said, I can sort of relate. And so I think she gets what you might call an identity bump. That she's younger and she looks a little like me. And so, yeah. And so a lot of the groups that Trump was doing well in, they fled back. But so that's the identity bump. The question is, what's the class dynamics here? And so a lot of the divergence, especially in the Latino vote, was about class. It wasn't highly educated Latinos who were swinging over. It was the less educated working class folks. And so does she have to tell, and I think she does, an economic story and an immigration story? And the fact that Trump is not telling his story is political malpractice. But as you say, keeping Trump on focus is not necessarily the job you want to have.
As they're showing these videos, of course, we'll be seeing throughout the evening here. We should note that every time former President Trump comes up on the screen, the entire arena behind us erupts into boos. But they are drawing a very clear contrast here, Amy, in terms of who this party is united against. And I wonder, too, because I want to bring it back to this idea that the headliner tonight is the current sitting president, is the man who's continuing to message on the fact that he believes democracy is at stake, that this man can never be president again. What do you expect to hear from him? We've talked a little bit about the legacy part of it, but also that he has to really get behind Harris and Walz in this speech tonight to say this is the future.
That's right. So back, those many months ago, which only was a month ago, when we were all sitting around talking about what's the pathway for Democrats, it was Biden has no choice but to make the election just all about Donald Trump. It just has to be complete referendum on him, and that this convention would have been 90% how terrible Donald Trump is and 10% of like, yay, Joe Biden, let's go. You're going to see a very different convention this time. Yes, there's still going to be attacks on Trump, the contrast with Trump, but it will be leaning much more into the positive and the energy that wouldn't have been there had Biden been taking this nomination tonight. Well, wouldn't it be on Thursday? The other thing that's remarkable, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot, but we have never seen a sitting president in a modern era give up running for re-election and then show up to talk to these very same people who said, yeah, we're okay with you leaving, and we're really happy to have someone else. Obviously, Lyndon Johnson did not come to Chicago in 1968. So this is really, it's a historic moment. And it is going to be, I think you're going to see just an outpouring of support for Biden, for who he is, but also for what he allowed to happen, which is the energy, as we were talking about earlier, that this feeling in the building that we can actually do this, people feel like they can win, and that it's seeping up from the grassroots. It doesn't feel like it is manufactured.
The other point of contrast that might be worth just putting a point on is that this week we will see veterans of previous Democratic White Houses, Democratic campaigns, former Democratic cabinet secretaries, former Democratic presidents. We didn't see any of that at the RNC.
Not at all.
That's good and bad. So I think it's good because you got a lot of superstars. We're going to get to see Obamas and Clintons. I was in the White House several months ago, and one of the big important meetings broke up out of this room called the Roosevelt Room, and all the people walked out, and I knew them all. And I knew them all not only from this time, I knew them all from 20 years ago. And so there's like a lot of the same people have been in Democratic administrations through Obama and through Clinton. And so if you're a country that wants change, which 70% say we want change, then you're thinking, well, kind of the same old crew. And so I think Harris has been very smart to pick up a lot of those Obama people to help run the campaign because they do know what they're doing. But I think it's something to watch out for. Can she say, I am something totally, I'm your change agent here, which Donald Trump, for all his flaws, can say, I'm your change agent, even though he's already been president once. But so I think that's something to pay attention to if I were the Harris campaign.
How does she do that, Jonathan? Because voters do want change, right? That's every 4 years, that's what they want. For Vice President Harris to package herself as an agent of change here when she's the sitting vice president to this president that the Democrats don't want to run anymore. How does she overcome that?
Well, I mean, she's starting to already. If people didn't think she was a change agent, we wouldn't be here talking about the sitting vice president about to take the nomination. We'd be looking for, okay, who's got the votes? We'd be talking about a floor fight. And we don't have that. I think just visually, generationally, demographically, she's changed. And people are responding to that. The fact that she comes into this not with the apparatus that Clinton had or Biden had. President Obama didn't have nearly as entrenched a coterie of people as Clinton and Biden when he came into office. And so I think the way she's possibly looking at this, and the way that the American people should look at this, is you use the best from Clinton, successful two-term presidency, the best from Obama, successful two-term Democratic presidency, and then you bring the people with you who have been with you from the beginning. And I think it's the New York Times has a story about the very people who were involved in this last incredible month that saw her go from loyal vice president on June 27th to Democratic presidential nominee right now. There are people around her who have been with her since her time as California Attorney General. These are all people, and there are more people. Once you get to the presidency, all sorts of people who work for you will come out with their expertise for good and bad. And so the change will be, who does she bring with her in addition to the folks who have the expertise? I get what you're saying, David. Like, there's some bad that comes with having folks who've been at, grinding at the wheel all this time, but you get a lot of good when you tap into those folks. They've got the experience. They know how to do these things.
To the point that Senator Peters raised earlier, though, Jonathan, do you think she needs to more explicitly break policy-wise from the Biden-Harris administration?
I mean,
does that matter?
Well, it matters because she's still the vice president, and that's the delicate dance. And one of the things I'm very interested to hear from President Biden is, does he rhetorically give her the leeway to when she comes out on Thursday to break some dishes?
Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting the way you phrased that question, too, about we didn't see any of these people with Trump. It was, as we discussed a lot in Milwaukee, the party that showed up in Milwaukee is not a party of Republicans, it's a party of Trump. And that it was all about one person's personality. This is a convention for a party, the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris is one of them. And that's the very big difference between the two conventions. And this is the message that the Harris campaign is also trying to put forward, which is, he's all about himself. We're about you. We're a team. He's his own player looking out for himself. And that, to me, is like really the biggest, thus far, one of the biggest differences.
Yeah. And one of the rhetorical changes that we've seen, I wish this was an original thought, but it was actually Ezra Klein who pointed this out, that the way that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz talk about Donald Trump is vastly different. That in many ways that Joe Biden unintentionally elevated him and made him a bigger figure by talking about him as an existential threat and this perilous threat to democracy, whereas Harris and Walz openly make fun of him, call him weird. They're trolling him on his own social media accounts. What do you see as the political impact of that?
Yeah, I don't like that change. I think weird was good for a week. It was nice. But you can't, this meme campaign that they're running, it's not presidential. And, this is a serious office for a serious country in serious times. And so to me, weird is a week. And if you want to spend your whole campaign doing memes, fine. But I do think Donald Trump is actually a threat to democracy. And you might as well say that. And, they just set it up on the screen here. So I don't think they're going to walk away from that. But, yeah, I'm against memes as presidential campaigns. So
You're anti-meme.
Are you anti-meme in general or just presidential?
I'm a change agent with new blood who's against technology.
And meme.
And meme.
Jonathan, pro-meme, anti-meme, where do you stand?
Look, I am pro-meme when it is directed at a narcissist for whom this kind of attack, it gets right under his skin. And this is why he can't focus on policy. This is why he can't focus on the things that Graham and Nikki Haley are trying to communicate with him through television and through blind quotes or on-the-record quotes in the press to focus on policy. He can't because the meme campaign, which is just part of the campaign, it's not the campaign. It's just part of the campaign, which is why I think it's extremely effective because, again, you want young people to be interested in this campaign. Young people are all about memes. I don't have kids. You have kids. They might be in memes. They're all in the memes.
My kids are very offline. I just want to clear that.
Also, they're too, yeah.
What?
Not cool for my kid. My kid is, if I like it, it's not cool.
But, you know, the kids today, you know, when it comes to memes, they're very demure.
Oh, gosh.
I had to. I just
Mark
had
the
to.
time. Mark the time for the first demure
All right,
reference.
we're going to put
Very
a button
classy.
on this and head to the stage and pick up the rest of this speech from California Senator LaFonza Butler.
The mortgage crisis together with families who lost their homes. She took on the biggest banks in the world and won a settlement 5 times what was initially offered. Every time she walked into a courtroom, she would simply say, Kamala Harris for the people. For her, it wasn't just a professional oath. It was a battle cry. And let's be clear, to her opponents, this way of seeing the world, the idea of fighting for someone other than yourself is unthinkable. But let me tell you, Democrats, what's really unthinkable. Conning young people who simply want a good education is unthinkable. Stiffing hardworking laborers like Donald Trump did in Atlantic City is unthinkable. Bragging about having ripped away a woman's freedom to choose what she does with her own body is unthinkable. And Democrats, Americans, we deserve better. We deserve a president who is tough, not just tough talking. One who shatters the boundaries of what's possible, not the boundaries of what's legal. And one who wipes the floor with cheats and fraudsters because, well, Democrats, she knows the type. Democrats, that president, the president that we deserve, that president is my friend, Kamala Harris. Thank you all so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deja Fox, and I'm so excited to be here today from Arizona. That's right. That's where I was born and raised by a single mom. I was a free lunch kid, raised in public housing, and I got my health care at Planned Parenthood. Because of policies that lift people up, I walked through the gates of my dream school as a first-generation college student. People my age are making big decisions about our lives, and we deserve a president who has our back. Not some power-hungry millionaire reality TV personality who only cares about himself. We need Kamala Harris. She'll deliver a future where we can decide if and when to start a family. A future where we can afford rent and groceries. A future where we're not crushed under student debt. A future where any free lunch kid can walk through the gates of their dream college. For young people, this is a fight for our future. We have a responsibility to do this, and we have a responsibility of future where we're not crushed under student debt, a future where any free lunch kid can walk through the gates of their dream college. For young people, this is a fight for our future. We have a responsibility to do this, and we have a responsibility to do it right, and that's why we're gonna show up for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And here now, with a musical performance, is Jason Isbell. Thank you.
something beautiful we'll have to build again. When I get home from work, I'll wrestle off my clothes and leave them right inside the front door. Nobody's home to know. You see that hammer finds the nail, and the freight train leaves the rail. I guess I'm doing what I'm on this earth to do. I don't think, oh, I'm here where it hurts. I'm just lucky to have the work. And Sunday morning I'm too tired to go to church, but I thank God for the word. I thank God for the word. When I get my reward, my work will all be done, and I will sit back in my chair beside the Father and the Son. With no more holes to fill and no more rocks to break, no more golden boxes on the truck for someone else's sake. You see the hammer finds the nail, and the poor man's up for sale. I guess I'm doing what I'm on this earth to do. I don't think, oh, I'm here where it hurts. I'm just lucky to have the word. And every night I dream I'm drowning in the dirt, but I thank God for the word. And the day will come, I'll find a reason, somebody proud to love a man like me. 'Cause my back is numb, my hands are freezing, but what I'm working for is something more than free. I don't think, oh, I'm here where it hurts. I'm just lucky to have the word. Sunday morning I'm too tired to go to church, but I thank God for the word. I thank God for the word. Thank you. Shout out to my Alabama delegation over there. I love y'all.
Kamala Harris worked hard to achieve her goals.
Raised by a working mother, I had a summer job at McDonald's.
Donald Trump worked hard to spend his daddy's fortune. She believes in working hard for the American people.
When the middle class is strong, America is strong.
Donald Trump believes in working hard for his billionaire friends.
I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care.
Please welcome former Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo.
Hello, Democrats. Hello, Chicago. It's a great honor for me to be here this evening. You know, long before I was the governor of Rhode Island, I was a little girl growing up there in a middle-class family. My dad found his American dream in a watch factory in Providence. And that job gave him a way to provide for our family, a community for him to belong to, and so much pride.
But like so many Americans in the 80s, after 25 years of his hard work, his job and the job of all of his friends was shipped overseas. You know, years later, my dad said to me, Gina, this happened because our leaders let us down. And my father was right. The Republicans in power who pushed failed economic strategy. Let's just cut taxes for the wealthy and leave everybody else behind. Well, not only did my father lose his job, but frankly, manufacturing left my state. Manufacturing withered in Rhode Island and all across this nation. In communities all across America, factories shuttered, communities got hollowed out, and people were left without their job, without hope, without the dignity that comes with a decent job. And you know, Republican economic policy failed Rhode Island. How do I know that? Because when I took office, first Democrat elected governor in a couple of decades, I inherited one of the worst economies in the country. It was a mess. But we got to work and we turned it around. We turned it around with a pro-business, pro-worker agenda. Kamala Harris has that same agenda. She knows we need an economy where the costs are low and opportunities abound. An economy where people can show up to their jobs with dignity and pride. She has a new economic vision for America. You know how she knows that? She knows it because just like me, Kamala Harris grew up in a middle-class home. Her mom worked to cure breast cancer by day and feed her family at night. And as an adult, Kamala worked to lock up sex offenders and violent criminals by day. And she took care of her sick mother at night. Kamala Harris gets it. She gets that so many Americans work so hard every day and they're barely getting by. And that is not right. It is a fundamental economic principle. Hard work ought to pay off. We believe in that. And that's why the Vice President is committed to building the opportunity economy, an economy that rewards ambition, an economy that rewards hard work. She believes in an America where everyone, regardless of who you are, what you have, where you started, you got a chance to get ahead in this country. Kamala Harris will give more than 100 middle-class Americans a tax cut. She'll build 3 million new homes for the middle class. And she's going to forge an economy with fair competition, free from monopolies. Monopolies that crush workers and small businesses and startups. Kamala Harris will make building up the middle class a defining goal of her presidency.
Gina Raimondo is on the stage now, but we're going to take a short break for our PBS stations. We will be right back with continued live coverage of the Democratic National Convention. Stay with us.
I'm Michael Beschloss, presidential historian, NewsHour contributor. 1956, Adlai Stevenson was nominated, and then he said, why don't I just let the delegates select who they want for vice president? And there was this amazing confrontation on the floor between John Kennedy, the little-known senator from Massachusetts, against Estes Kefauver, who had been the runner-up to Stevenson. It was very close. For a lot of it, it looked as if it was going to go to Kennedy. Finally, Kefauver won. Kennedy got up and gave a concession speech.
This convention has selected a man who has campaigned in all parts of the country, who has worked entirely for the party, who will serve as an admirable running mate to Governor Stevenson. I hope that this convention will make Estes Kefauver's nomination unanimous. Thank you.
In a way, that was the first speech that Kennedy gave in the 1960 presidential campaign.
And welcome back to PBS News live coverage of the Democratic National Convention. I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. Coming up tonight, we expect to hear speeches from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, and President Biden. But for now, let's head back to the convention floor.
I am a lifelong Republican, a former Trump voter, and I will not be voting for Trump in 2024.
My name is Norma. I'm from Carson, Washington, and I am a two-time Trump voter. I will not be voting for Trump this time around.
I'm actually embarrassed to say that I did vote for Trump in 2016.
Donald Trump has nothing but contempt for the American people, and ironically, for those who claim to be his base. He's only interested in benefiting himself personally.
Everything he said he would do, he did not do. I do not trust that he can do the right thing anymore.
We've seen what Donald Trump really is, and it disgusts me to my core.
I don't think the man can be trusted. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's a very dishonest person. I hate the way he disrespects women.
Voting against Trump and for Kamala Harris is the right thing to do.
Please welcome New York Governor Kathy Hochul.
Hello, Democrats. Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris, the first president of the United States? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Friends, like so many of us, my grandparents came from Ireland as teenagers with nothing but hope in their hearts and fire in their bellies. They built their lives in the promised land of Buffalo, New York. A union card meant good work at the steel plant. The steel plant that lifted my parents from living in a trailer to the middle class. Like other families in my blue-collar community, they believed that with hard work, they could build a better future, not just for themselves, but for those with less hope and less opportunity. I'm proud of my roots and the values I learned. Grit, determination, compassion. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz grew up with those same values. And those values have always defined the people of my state. Well, most of us anyway. Donald Trump was born a New Yorker, but ended up a fraud, a philanderer, and a felon. He wasn't raised with the New York values that I know. He never had to worry about childcare costs or groceries or rent. He never had to worry about anything or anyone but himself. Trust me, America, If you think you're tired of Donald Trump, talk to a New Yorker. We've had to deal with him for 78 long years. The fraud, the tax dodging, the sham university, the shady charities. We've seen him stiff contractors, rip off workers. He abuses women, brags about it, and then takes away their rights. And New Yorkers are sick of it. It's no wonder he had a fleet of Mar-a-Lago. Sorry about that, Florida. Sorry about that. Trump hasn't spent much time in New York lately, except that is to get convicted of 34 felonies. And that's just fine with us, because New York's motto is Excelsior, ever upward. And Trump takes us ever downward. Because here's what Trump never understood. America isn't a luxury good to be bought and sold by the privileged and powerful few. America, we just can't afford another 4 years of that. We have kids to feed, roads to build, jobs to create, real problems to solve. And we need leaders who can get it done. Trump talked big about bringing back manufacturing jobs. But you know who actually did it? President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kamala. And look no further than the city of Syracuse, where a company called Micron is building a $100 billion microchip factory with union labor. It's the largest private investment in American history, and it's going to create 50,000 good-paying jobs. The Biden-Harris administration has made the most significant investments in our economy in generations. And as president, Kamala Harris will continue to build an opportunity economy for all. My friends, history's watching us. Together, we must protect abortion rights. Together, we must protect the middle class. Together, we must protect the American dream. And together, we must elect Kamala Harris President of the United States. Thank you.
Trying to rain on the thunder, tell a storm I'm new. I'm a wild, come and march on the regular, painted white flags blue.
What kind of America do we want? One where we're divided, angry, depressed? Come on, we're Americans. Fascism, we conquered it. The moon, landed on it. The future, building it. Freedom, nobody loves it more. And we fight for it. Freedom from control. Freedom from extremism and fear.
Extremists want to take us back, but we are not going back.
We go forward. That's American. And we need a leader who is for the people.
Ours is a fight for the future.
Kamala Harris, protecting people from predators and big drug cartels, holding Wall Street banks accountable,
a crime perpetrated against our middle class.
Standing up to dictators and fighting for all of us.
I say we fight.
That's our choice. A prosecutor or a felon.
Are you ready to make your voices heard? Of America. And are we ready to fight for it? I'ma keep running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves. And when we fight, we win. To be with everyone this evening in this hall and everyone at home. This is going to be a great week. And I want to kick us off by celebrating our incredible President Joe Biden, who will be speaking later tonight. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.